What if a single pill could kill you? Not because of a bad reaction, not because of an overdose, but because someone wanted it that way. It's 1982. A 12-year-old girl wakes up with a sore throat and a runny nose. Her parents do what any parent would. They hand her a bottle of Tylenol. She swallows 2 capsules. Within hours, she's gone. News began to spread like wildfire. Radio stations issued alerts. Do not take Tylenol. Repeat, do not take Tylenol. Television stations cut into regular programming to warn the public. In grocery stores, pharmacies, and gas stations, people rushed to return Tylenol bottles, unsure if theirs was safe or deadly. Shelves were cleared. Some citizens flushed their Tylenol. Others dumped it into the trash. The media labeled it the Tylenol terror. This was more than a crime. It was consumer terrorism, striking fear into every household in America. If you're deep into this chilling tale, help keep stories like this alive. Subscribe to Crimson Files, hit that like button, and share this story. Not just for the algorithm, but because these cases matter. Now, let's talk about how the killer may have pulled it off. At first, investigators feared a nightmare scenario. Had someone at the Tylenol factory poisoned entire batches? But the investigation soon revealed something even more chilling. The poison bottles came from different production plants, packaged at different times, and sent to different stores. There was no tampering at the source. The capsules had been poisoned after reaching the shelves. Someone had walked into local stores, grocery stores, pharmacies, drug chains, opened sealed Tylenol bottles, emptied out capsules, replaced the medicine with cyanide, and reclosed the containers. In those days there were no tamper-proof seals, no child safety caps, no foil barriers, just a cotton ball inside a bottle, and a killer who knew it. The known death toll reached 7, but the fear was nationwide. Hospitals began reporting non-lethal poisonings, people who survived after vomiting or calling for help in time. Others may have died with no one connecting the dots. Authorities couldn't be sure how many people had been affected, and with capsules being easy to tamper with and hard to test without lab equipment, fear gripped the country. Pharmacies pulled Tylenol from shelves, consumers turned to aspirin, Advil, or simply suffered through pain unmedicated. Tylenol sales plummeted by over 90%, and in boardrooms across the country, executives asked the same question: who would do this? By the time the 7th death was confirmed, the case had exploded into national headlines. The FBI, FDA, ATF, and local Chicago police launched one of the largest multi-agency investigations in U.S. history. Johnson & Johnson, the manufacturer of Tylenol, found itself in the middle of the chaos. Their best-selling product was now the face of death. Instead of hiding, Johnson & Johnson did something that shocked the public. They issued an immediate nationwide recall of 31 million bottles of Tylenol at a cost of over $100 million. They set up hotlines, worked with authorities, and ran full-page ads warning people not to consume their product. It was a masterclass in crisis response, but it was also an admission. Someone had turned their medicine into a murder weapon, and the killer was still loose. Just days into the investigation, a letter arrived at Johnson & Johnson headquarters. It was postmarked from Chicago. The letter was short, cold, and terrifying. The writer claimed responsibility for the poisonings and demanded $1 million to stop. If you want to stop the killing, it read, wire the money to the account below. The signature, James W. Lewis. Investigators traced the account to a bank in New York. The name matched a real person, and soon, the FBI had a suspect, but as they dug deeper, things only got stranger. James Lewis was no ordinary man. Brilliant, eccentric, and dangerously manipulative, Lewis had a long history of fraud and forgery. He'd once been arrested for impersonating a tax accountant. He was also a fugitive wanted for the suspected murder of a former client. When the FBI finally tracked him down, they expected a criminal mastermind. Instead, they found a man living quietly in New York City with his wife. Confident, composed, and smiling. Lewis admitted to sending the extortion letter, but here's the twist. He denied actually poisoning anyone. He said he only wanted to take advantage of the situation to scare Johnson & Johnson into paying him. In court, prosecutors could only prove the extortion, not the murders. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, but never charged with the killings. To this day, James Lewis remains the prime suspect, but also a free man. Think about that. A man connected to one of the most horrifying mass poisonings in US history, never faced murder charges. If stories like this intrigue you, if you believe in keeping cold cases alive until justice is done, hit like, subscribe to Crimson Files and drop a comment below with your thoughts. The truth still matters. Let's keep going. Forensic experts analyzed over 1,200 Tylenol bottles across the country. Only bottles in the Chicago area were found to be tainted. That ruled out a manufacturing issue, and strongly suggested local tampering. But surveillance cameras in 1982 were rare. There were no fingerprints on the bottles, no security footage, no eyewitnesses. The killer had simply walked into stores, tampered with products, and vanished. The randomness made the case almost impossible to solve. There was no clear motive, no connection between the victims, no political message, no manifesto, no signature, just death. Besides James Lewis, investigators looked into multiple suspects: disgruntled former employees, copycats, domestic extremists. One suspect, a dock worker with a chemistry background, had cyanide in his home. Another had threatened Tylenol executives in the past, but every lead ended in the same place: nowhere. There was no smoking gun, no confession, no final piece of the puzzle, just the memory of 7 innocent people, and the fear that anyone could be next. Perhaps even more chilling was what came after. In the months and years following the Tylenol murders, dozens of copycat poisonings were reported. From cold medicine to eye drops to food products, individuals across the country began tampering with consumer goods. Some were pranks, others were serious attempts to kill. Retailers were forced to rethink packaging, Congress rushed to act, and an entire generation of Americans learned a new phrase: tamper-evident packaging. Before 1982, it didn't exist. After 1982, it became mandatory: foil seals, plastic wrapping, glue tabs, warning labels, all because of one faceless killer who walked into a store and turned trust into terror. To this day, no one has ever been charged with the murders. Not James Lewis, not anyone else. The case remains open, but cold. The FBI still accepts tips, and for the families of Mary Kellerman, Adam Janus, Teresa Janus, Paula Prince, and the others, closure has never come because the killer is still out there, or he got away with it. In the weeks after the last known poisoning, the entire country watched as Chicago turned into a battleground. Stores stripped Tylenol from shelves. Pharmaceutical companies scrambled to explain how something so ordinary could be turned into a weapon. People began checking everything, from milk cartons to chewing gum to baby formula. Trust in everyday products had been shattered. And the worst part? There were no arrests, no closure, no reason to believe it couldn't happen again. Let's never forget the names of those lost. Mary Kellerman, 12 years old. Adam Janus, 27. Teresa Janus, 19. Stanley Janus, 25. Mary Reiner, 27. Paula Prince, 35. Mary McFarland, 31. Each of them had dreams, families, and futures. They weren't connected in any way except by a random act of evil. At their funerals, families mourned without answers. At their homes, dinner tables sat empty. And across America, a terrifying new reality had taken hold. No product was ever truly safe again. For years, the Tylenol murders remained cold. Then, in 2009, nearly 27 years later, the case came roaring back to life. The FBI reopened the investigation with new forensic tools. Agents raided James W. Lewis's home in Massachusetts. They removed computers, documents, and samples of his handwriting, looking for any link to the original crime. Media outlets speculated, was this it? Had they finally found the missing piece? But again, nothing. No charges, no new evidence, and silence from Lewis. Frustration boiled over among the families, another moment of hope, gone. In July 2023, news broke that stunned those still following the case. James W. Lewis was found dead in his home in Cambridge, Massachusetts. No foul play, no suicide note. He was 76 years old. And with his death, the last living thread of hope for a confession, for any form of truth, seemed to vanish. Some called it the end of the story. Others saw it as a permanent injustice. A case that proved how easy it was to get away with murder in America. And how helpless even the most powerful institutions can be. In the end, the Tylenol murders were about more than poison. They were about trust, and how quickly it can disappear. They were about how one act of cruelty can lead to nationwide change. And they were a terrifying reminder that sometimes, monsters don't wear masks. They walk into stores, tamper with medicine, and walk out, unnoticed. Today, every seal you break, every foil you peel, every warning you read, is because of what happened in Chicago in 1982. It's easy to forget, but we shouldn't, because while the killer may be gone, the impact of what they did is everywhere. You've just watched the full story of the Tylenol murders, a case that changed America and still haunts us to this day. If you believe stories like this need to be told, help Crimson Files grow by liking, subscribing, and sharing this series with someone who loves true crime and cold cases. Drop your theories in the comments. Do you think James W. Lewis was the killer, or was the real murderer never even questioned? Until next time, stay aware, stay curious, and stay safe.